According to this chronology that I found for Women's Fellowship, the church actually was organized in 1872, and Sunday school was started in 1873, and the Ladies' Aid Society started in 1874. Well, the cradle roll is something that I bet has been mentioned to me 10 times
really?
by
And
people.
I kind of thought that maybe people forgot about it. Because I'm old, you
Yeah.
know. And
Well, I think there was a group of people, like you said, that grew very close through the cradle
yeah,
roll.
and we did.
And there was a fellowship there that persisted, and because
Yeah.
several people have mentioned, and I said I know nothing about it other than I've heard other people say that it was such a
It was really a very informal group, and like you say, we got to be close. Our kids were close.
yes.
And they, of course, went to Sunday school, and, we brought them to play, and, had a
Sure.
sitter, and had different activities.
grew up
for 'em.
together.
Yeah, they grew up together.
Right. Well,
So did you have May baskets at that time?
Oh, yeah.
And that was a big deal
Big
at that
deal,
time?
yeah. Yeah, the teachers would come very early in the morning, and the courthouse people always came. All the offices, they'd meet here for coffee early
someone
on.
said banks
And
would
the
close.
banks,
We
too.
could-
All the
and-
banks, the guys and the women, they all came before the bank opened, and then after the banks and the courthouse opened, then they would kind of drift in if they didn't get in.
Mm-hmm. It was
But yeah, it was very well
supported by
supported
the
by
community.
the community.
Tired, I so look forward to that because I thought now's my big chance to get to know women in my church, and do some work in my church. And I think that's kind of the role of Women's Fellowship, to bring women together and to build that closeness where you feel like you can share life experiences with one another. Patterns are great.
Yes, yes. And a lot of
key
help.
things.
A
Yes.
lot of help is
Well, you
needed.
need many hands.
Yeah,
Yes.
the only one that I ever made was the gumball machines. Was the plastic I could sew around here and make the bottom, and then I would stick a penny
Perfect.
in there. Yeah,
Oh, perfect.
yeah.
Yeah,
and
every time Marcy Monkey would give the devotional, it was just wonderful. It was.
Well,
She's
see, that's
she's a
good.
very
You need to get and talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
that.
See, I remember the day that she gave the talk on aprons, because she collects them.
yes,
Sure.
yes.
And so she had all these different aprons that she brought, and with the significance of each one, where she got it, which was a real interesting. And
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
yeah,
I always enjoyed Marcy's devotionals, and she always
Yeah.
had different little stories to tell.
Perspectives
Yes.
too on things. It
Yes.
was always,
And the way she would tell them, it was just wonderful.
and I guess that's one of my favorite memories of Women's Fellowship is the programs that we had, and just different speakers. I mean, and programs. I loved when they brought the students in from the high school and the Christmas time, and
Yeah.
to hear them sing the madrigals, and it was something I always looked forward to, the programs, and just being able to work together. When you prepared a meal for the fellowship once a year, it was fun to do, to be able to give back. People had done a lot of things for me, and you think, when people do this for you, what are you doing for other people? And it was a turnabout time for me to be able to say, okay, now I can do this for you. Right. But I think it's going to be vital to the survival of our churches and our communities and
everything.
in everything, and caring for one another. I mean, we just have to care about one another.
I think that no matter what board, or not necessarily church, but whatever your involvement in.
Oh, I remember we had bars
Yeah.
on
We
those
did
pins.
too. It was very important.
It was.
That was very
You know,
important.
And if you went to another church, you got a sheet saying you
Yeah.
attended.
Yes.
an
It's just
involvement.
me. And I think all of that is partly fellowship and wanting to do and being part of the community
Right.
and with people.
Well, and Kay Price took me under her wing
Oh, yeah.
with the May breakfast.
Oh,
I
gosh.
thank her every day, every May breakfast day, I think.
I think she still relives May breakfast. She would love to come back for it, she said, no number of times. Well, Kay was one that did a lot for this church too.
Definitely.
She was very involved with the music aspects, with choir and bell choir, and for May breakfast,
Yeah.
yes. People that did homemade rolls, and
Yeah.
I remember doing
And it
that.
wouldn't be me. See,
Well, my husband became sick in 96 and passed away in 97. And I think during that time my church has always been important, but it was very important then. And all of the people that reached out from the church during that time and how important that was and how it made me feel. And even more welcome because we'd only been in Spencer about 3 years when all of this
That's right.
started.
Yeah.
So I think that was one point as far as this church. It was just very important.
I had joined women's Bible study when I retired, and Wendy had said, "Why don't you think about coming to Bible study? I think you'd enjoy it." So I went to Lucy's, and I really did enjoy it. And I had been in Bible study about a year, and my sister had breast cancer and died very suddenly. And Wendy came and called my home where I was staying with my parents. And she prayed with me that whole time, every night. And I appreciated that so. Still am moved by that.
yeah, I think for us, Reverend Hauer was because he was here when we came.
And you
And
connected.
he was an important part of our lives. And he was so down to earth, and it was a real loss when he retired. And then Patrick came, and he was great and young. He was my oldest daughter. Was his first wedding,
Oh,
and so
mm-hmm.
and so it's always been a part of me. I wouldn't.
And when we came here, it was a feeling of family. And it was small enough you could get to know every person in church. You could, get acquainted with them, and you felt like you were a part of it. And it was just a strong sense of family for us.
Yeah.
Marcy, tell me about the library before I took over.
Well, I was on the library board a long time when it was really thriving. I can't remember when I started, but I started teaching Sunday school in 1964, and it was just shortly after that I started at the library committee. Anyway, every month we would meet, and Ruby would bring the catalog from the office. You do that. You did that also. And we would go through and look at the new books, fiction, Christian fiction, and Christian nonfiction mostly, and children's books. And then the committee would look, and every month we would try to get at least 2 or 3 books ordered, because our budget would handle that. And so we'd always be concerned with the children. And then when the books came, this was a big day, because Ruby would say, "All right, now we're going to get these books ready for the shelves." And we didn't just take a book and put it on the shelf. Those books all had to be accessioned in an accession book. And Ruby knew exactly all the steps to preparing a book for the shelf. So we had an assembly line, and she would tell each one of us what our job was. And we didn't have a typewriter. Ruby wrote in the accession book, and she had this beautiful hand. Oh, you could tell that she was really an older woman from a generation before me because of her penmanship.
From Maxine Christopherson.
That was such a good idea you had, Betty.
Yeah, well, I remember this was really before I got real active in the church. She would have this article in the newsletter, this little poem or our poise, whatever it was. and I looked forward to it.
Oh, I did
She had a
too.
gift for words.
Oh, she was so talented in so many areas. She was wonderful.
Yeah. So anyhow, I went and I dug out all the newsletters from what's the date in here?
When did she start?
Well, let's see. Okay, Pastor Tom had put this in here. Oh, okay. Well, it started. Okay, the first one is September 1989, and the last one is September 1994.
See, those are the ones that I kept
Yeah,
also
yeah.
because I tore them off every month when the newsletter came.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I did was read the last page,
Yeah.
and then I tear it off and keep it.
Uh-huh.
And so I kept it
Yep.
in this little red box.
Right.
And I told you when that was such a good idea, you were going to put these poems and compositions together. And I said, "Oh, Betty, maybe I can help you because I've got nearly all of them in my little red box." So I said, "I'll bring it, and you can look and see if you want a copy from my copies." Well, I hadn't opened this little box for quite a few years, and I opened it up, and oh my, it was still so pungent and so bitter and so
But
Well,
why
to
was
us-
it? Why was it so bitter and pungent?
well, I will show you. And that is a whole little story by itself, but it fits in so well with the book. Anyway, when this had happened before,
Okay.
and we were Maxine Christopherson and I were in the same circle.
Okay.
And so one time in December, it was our job to get devotions ready. And you know how Maxine was just so intelligent.
Oh, yes.
And just so well read and well traveled. And she said, "Oh, Marcy, I've got a catalog, and it says we can send for frankincense and myrrh." And so when we tell about the king's coming to the baby and baby Jesus, well, they gave gold, frankincense, and myrrh, but none of us know what they are. So she said, "I'm going to send for it." Well, she called me in a little while, and she said, "Oh, yes, Marcy, the frankincense and myrrh, it's potpourri." But it came, and so now we won't open it and add water to it and put it on a stove. We'll just take the package and pass around the circle, and then they can all smell. Now, frankincense and myrrh are both resin from trees, and it comes out of the bark, and it comes out and hardens in little brownish yellow clumps, and those are what they take off and grind up, and both of them are much alike. But anyway, they mix it with this. In this potpourri, it's also mixed with bark of the tree and little ground up. But this is what the frankincense and myrrh
my.
looks like. Well, they both are grown. Those trees are grown in East Africa and Arabia, so of course we would not know what they smelled like. But this is what they smell. You can take a smell.
Oh, my. Oh, my.
Yes, well, when I opened the box, and I thought, and of course I decided, when Maxine said, "You know, Marcy, I really don't want this potpourri in my house because I don't know where I'd put it, that I want that smell." So she said, "You can take it home if you want it, otherwise we'll throw it." "Oh, no," I said, "I'll take it home." And I took it home, and the whole big bag again. Oh, my eyes and my nose and my ears were so itchy. And by the time we decided we'll put this away, poor Maxine was sneezing, and we were both so allergic to this potpourri. So, Maxine said, "Marcy, we don't dare pass that around the circle because just think, if everybody's allergic like we are, everybody's going to sit there with itching ears and noses and sneezing and coughing." So that's why I took it home and wrapped it up and put it. But I put it in the box with Maxine's pages because I associated that with our devotions we'd had. So I had these, and I kept them in this box like this because it would fit, and I didn't want to lose them, and I didn't file things, but I did this. Oh, every single sheet is just permeated with frankincense and myrrh.
I remember you brought
remember?
the box. Yes, I remember.
And I said, "Oh, Betty, you can't. I don't think you can do this. You're going to be so allergic to looking at every sheet that's and typing from this." And I don't know. I have most of them, but there were some missing. But anyway, you decided to no. Let's not use your sheets to copy from for the book, because oh my, But we learned about frankincense and myrrh.
Right.
And that was a valuable gift for the baby Jesus.
Who are y'all talking?
Maxine Christopherson. She died in 1997.
Okay.
So we're going back a long ways. But it's just the fact that she each month had a article, and they were beautiful, and like she has solving the problem. So she has a little poem about solving the problem, and she had one about Reverend Chris Richards and Jonathan. There's
Yes.
one, yeah. Jonathan was Reverend Chris's son that died of cancer when he was what, 8?
9.
9 years old, and it's remembering
Right.
Jonathan.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, and she also had one about Mary Kay. She
Yes.
had one about
A
windows.
tribute to her.
Yeah, windows, and to Norm and Ava Hepworth.
They had been the custodians.
And they were the custodians. She had about Christmas. She had about autumn. She had it about going to to cemetery on Memorial Day. There must be, I don't know how many is in here, but there's quite a few. But I went through all of the newsletters, and I ran off
See-
copies. I took them home, and I typed it up. You and I and Shirley went to the library, and we proofread it.
Yes.
Read it. Then when we got all the pages, we had to put the pages together.
Yes, we did.
Well, the bazaar was a woman's fellowship project. It was our money maker, is what we had, and we also raffled off quilts and had raffles and a lot of different things. It involved from one thing to another, but it was a money making thing along with the tea room for the woman's fellowship. So anyhow, that's how I learned to do the bazaar. And what I remember about the bazaar, it was very, very popular because we had people lined up. The minister came into the fellowship hall where we had it, rang the bell, and he skadooted.
Remember, nobody could buy anything until the bell rang, and whoever was going to ring the bell watched that clock. And at 2:00 the bell rang, and then the door opened, and wow,
Wow.
they swarmed in.
Wow.
It
Those
was-
were the days.
Yes, they were. Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Such hard work and such
Oh,
fun.
yeah. Yeah, it was such a thing. So Shirley Johnstone and I did the bazaar. And that's when our theme was Granny's Kitchen.
Okay.
I went and made granny hats
I know.
for all of the women. Oh my, the
So-
elastic
you
don't
must
go
have a
now. I
child
can't
one.
put it on. My elastic is, well, anyhow, we had these granny hats.
They were so cute. Everybody was in the dining room with those.
Yeah, everybody wore them. They were all good sports. Always remember Shirley.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah.
She, of course, she was in our age group. But, we learned so much from older women and a generation
Oh,
ahead
yes.
of us.
Yes, we
and
did.
from, like, Shirley. And I just think we were so blessed to have such good teachers, such fine examples before us and with us.
And we turned out to be teachers.
Yes, we did. So we learned so much in such a Christian atmosphere, and we could laugh and have fun.
Oh, yes.
But it was all done so appropriately. It was just oh, that's really how you get to know each other, is working
Right,
together on some project.
right.
Now, didn't you get to know Shirley really well working with her like
Oh,
that?
absolutely. Anyhow, we had the May breakfast. Yeah, and and the May breakfast way back then is you had all the sweet rolls you could eat. It was coffee, juice, sweet rolls, and muffins. And I remember Kay Price telling about it when they first moved to Spencer. Her and Denny thought, okay, we'll go and have our breakfast. And she says, oh my, we were on a sugar high all day. She said,
Because the more I worked, the better I got to know people, and more important, I realized this church does have long traditions of the early people, and that we would find out little by little about those generations that started this. And as I worked in fellowship and circle and all these boards, deaconess, oh, my faith just grew. And I just was so thankful. And to this day, I just thank God that I've had all these opportunities, and He's blessed me so much. And I don't know, the people are very important in our church. They really are the backbone, and you learn, and it carries on. And sure, it changes as technology and everything comes in, but there's still that basic, straight thing that does not change. Our faith does not change, and it's catchy and contagious, and it's wonderful.
anyhow, I was treasurer, and Reverend Fleshman, and he said, no, you can't do this. It's illegal. So I had to go to the state of Iowa and get a gambling permit. So this church has a gambling permit. And all you got to do is renew it if you want to.
Do we just renew it?
Yeah, all you do is renew it.
Have we renewed it before?
Well, yeah, we renewed it because
Every time
we did
we had a new quilt.
Yeah, every time we had something to raffle off, Mary Kay says, well, we can sell it for a pencil. Well, no, he wouldn't stand for that either. No.
What if we hadn't had it and we got arrested?
But the church had an organized trip of young people to Chicago.
Oh, my word.
And we took a bus, and this was before the split. So the Congregational Church was still very big in Chicago. And we did marvelous things like we went to Hull House, where Jane Hull operated to the people, the needy people. We went to the University of Chicago, where I saw my first mummy.
Oh,
And we actually visited a lot of the churches, congregational churches in the area, and they very nicely fed us. Quite a few meals. We stayed downtown in the Y. And this would never be allowed today, but we were given a lot of freedom. And one of my best friends, Susan Avery, and I decided to do a little exploring on one blustery winter day, and accidentally took a wrong turn and ended up kind of an area that probably would be identified as a skid row. We were little girls from Northwest Iowa who'd done almost no traveling, and this was eye-opening. We just really learned so much from that trip. And so that's one of my favorite memories.
well, that's a great story. That's great. Well, my early memories are just enjoying all of the wonderful friendships here, because we had Cradle Roll Club.
Oh, yes, we did.
And being at home with preschoolers.
Right.
I loved coming to Cradle Roll.
It was great.
We had wonderful child care there, and we had a large group of women. That was kind of before the young women went back to work.
Right.
And so it was our outing. And also the cookbook.
Oh, yes, the cookbook.
We did this wonderful cookbook. And it was for the, let's see, what was it? For the 100th. Yeah, the 100th anniversary of the church. And this is what they looked like new. And this is what mine looks like after I have used it for many, many years. I do love our congregational cookbooks and use them a lot. And that was a project of Cradle Roll.
Well, Cradle Roll was an organization for young mothers in the church to have a chance to, I think, get together socially, and they had programs where different speakers were brought in, different people would be a hostess and provide refreshments, and I think part of my memory of it is that it was also kind of a support for the young moms. Like Katie said, we were a little more isolated then, and so it was a bit of a support group in a way to be around the other young moms of the church. I really preferred this church. I liked the philosophy behind it, and just lots of very friendly, welcoming people too. So that was the main reason that I decided to join here.
That's me too. I believe that my husband said to me, if you ever want me to go to church, you'd better join First Congregational.
There you are.
He grew up in the church. That we were always coming up with ideas. And when the 100th anniversary came around, we thought a cookbook would be, a new cookbook would be nice. And Beth Kramer was instrumental in seeing that got done. And I just wanted to, I don't have to show it. I have a nice new copy, and then I have my copy, which is dog-eared, the cover's gone, but all the recipes in it are just wonderful. Our congregational cooks are the best.
Oh, they are
really
the best. They're definitely the best.
For the bazaar, and they would ring a bell and people would come thronging in to buy the stuff at the bazaar. It was just
Exactly.
kind of funny.
The best.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
One thing a silly thing I remember from the May breakfast that has always stayed with me is that they always had egg coffee, which that's the only time I ever had egg coffee, it seems like, was at the church. I remember this because every Easter, the white dinner jackets that were worn by the ushers were donated by Eddie Quinn.
Oh, sure.
So that was kind of a nice thing that I always
Oh, that's true.
thought
I'd
they
forgotten
did.
about that.
I'd forgotten that too.
So that the ushers all were all dressed up with their little
yes.
boutonnieres and
Oh my
white dinner
gosh.
jackets. So,
Neat.
Yeah, that is neat.
We miss Eddie Quinn's store.
oh, yes. Well, whenever I go downtown, I see the Eddie Quinn mat is still at the
There.
front door.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, whatever was paid for that mat was worth every penny. We've been gone for like 35 years or more. Katie, what are you holding in your lap?
Well, when we did our mother-daughter, we did the mother-daughter banquet at the church for several years, and Cradle Roll sponsored it. And the programs were really fun. We had some very artistic people. And so we would pass the programs out, and they were different every year.
Well, partly it was a commonality. I mean, we were all basically going through the same problems, having the same issues to face, and it was like a support service. You know, you could exchange ideas, and it wasn't just recipes, but it was ideas for raising your children, or, you know,
True.
what do you think about this idea? It was a sounding board that
That's one of my main memories of it is being a support, and that's still very important.
Right. And I think Women's Fellowship can be that for a lot of people.
right.
I came to the church from the time I was born. My mother attended this church, and so when I was baptized in the church. I went to Sunday school all through high school, and I joined in. I was born out on a farm, so I had a little hard time to get into church, but I did get to Sunday school, and then I joined church in 1941, I believe. And
Year that we joined, or I joined the church, Dean already belonged, so, yeah. So, it's been since 1945.
I think that was kind of the same as when with me and Elmer. After we were married, we went one Sunday to his church and one Sunday to my church, and we kept doing this for the first almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And different from his church, but it was his decision, and he went and talked to Reverend Williams, Willis K. Williams, yeah, and said he would like to transfer his membership to our church, and so he met with him several times and never told me.
Oh,
And Easter morning, we came to church here, and here it was his name in the bulletin among the new members that were going in that day. So it was a happy time. I like the freedom that we have in the Congregational Church. So I applied for it, and Reverend Page was my first. I worked for 5.
yeah.
And he called and wanted to talk to me, and he said, well, the job is yours. And so the first thing he had me do, which, I mean, I started in March of 1959, and the first thing he had me do was take an inventory of the church, and I thought that was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard of. We had a religious education director by the name of Roy Shorvey. And so before Reverend Hallauer came, he said to me, well, you better start looking for another job, because every pastor sweeps the floor clean and you'll be out. So when he came about the first day, I marched myself into his office and said, are you planning to get rid of me? And he said, what do you mean? You're the backbone of this church.
Yeah.
Well, he was one that he came back in one day shortly after he had been here, and he said, I've got an idea. I just think you should run the office, and you take care of the office, and I'll take care of the congregation.
Oh, okay.
And so it was during the summer, and I only worked from 9 to 12. And the minister was on vacation. Nobody had come in the office. So I figured I had something on that afternoon or evening or something. And so I did. I shampooed my hair and I rolled it, put it up in rollers. And I came to church because nobody ever came. Lo and behold, who should walk in but Annette and Lori Schaefer.
Oh,
The
dear.
most meticulous people, dressed, you never saw a hair out of place. Well, I always kept crackers in my drawer, and so little Lori was probably 4 years old, maybe.
Yeah.
And so she walks around to get her cracker, and she stood there for quite a while, and she finally looked at me and said, Mary Kay, don't you know you do never come to church with your hair in rollers? I said, well, I do now, and I'll never do it again.
Yeah.
He had accepted his to go to Lansing, Michigan, and it so happened it was in the time of the May breakfast.
Yeah.
And he hadn't told the deacons or deaconesses. And I happened to be greeter that morning, and I was sitting out here, and I saw Rosemary Saunders had him cornered, and I knew there was something.
Yeah.
But they ended the conversation laughing, so that was good.
That was good.
And come to find out, what she was talking to him about was their daughter, Dean and Rosemary's daughter, went to Iowa State.
Oh, yeah.
And her roommate was from Lansing, Michigan.
Oh,
Well, you know what happened.
yeah.
They hired him. The roommate's mother called and told we have a minister. He's a congregational minister from Spencer, Iowa, and his name is Shelley. Maybe your roommate knows him. Well, she tells him, of course, Karen gets on the telephone, tells her mother, and so she comes to the May breakfast and says to Shelley, I hear you're leaving.
Yeah.
And that just floored him completely. So he had to call the deacons and deaconesses to a special meeting because you know how news, but that's just how news travels.
Yeah. Well, I think it means you have to reach out and be helpful and friendly to everybody. No matter how your feelings are sometimes, you still have to be a friend to all, so.
I think it means faith, freedom, and fellowship. You have the freedom of living with your conscience, the fellowship of the congregation, and it is a friendly, we try to be a friendly church. That just means the world to me.
I've had some people come up to me and say, you know, I've been to other churches, but she said, this is the first church I've been to that everybody will stop and talk to me. And I thought, well, you know, that's nice to hear. Yeah.
Huge bazaars and tea. In fact, at one May breakfast, a Methodist lady came up to me and said, you know, we look forward to the May breakfast at the Congregational Church. It's just like opening the door to spring.
Yeah.
And I think of that real often, that
Yeah.
it isn't only our church that makes it go, it's the people from other churches that come. One thing that I always remember, and not that I wanted to get credit for it, but it was, they had a Christmas party for the preschool kids, and Wanda Nelson brought little Abby, but nobody told her that the mother brought the gift for the child.
Oh.
And so here we had Mrs. Santa Claus, and she had put them up on her lap and talked to them and give them their gift, and of course they were all thrilled, but
Sure.
they didn't know their mother had brought it. Well, Wanda's eyes kept getting bigger and bigger because nobody had told her, and there wasn't anything for
sure.
Abby. And she was just devastated. And I happened to come out just to watch Mrs. Santa Claus and the kids. And I happened to think that the year before we had given just a darling little book with a Christmas story. And it was so sweet. I just wish I had one for me. And I happened to think of that, so I went back and I came and I said, Mrs. Santa Claus, well, she was trying to make up with Abby.
Oh, sure.
Because there wasn't anything. And I said, Mrs. Santa Claus, look, you dropped a gift out here, and
Yeah.
it's got Abby Nelson's name on it.
Oh.
Well, you should have seen the women in the kitchen were all crying, and Mrs. Santa Claus was all excited, and Abby was happy. And those were the kind of things that we could do.
Worked out just perfect, yeah.
And you know, that's what I said. We weren't for one, we were one for all of us.
Yeah.
More than
I have
me.
heard of them, yep.
Zola
Yes.
Anderson. It was at Zola Anderson's house where they formed the
Mayflower Guild.
Mayflower Guild. Okay? And here's the resolution for the Mayflower Guild. It's just cracks me up. We as members and friends of First Congregational Church of Spencer, Iowa, shall form a society to promote, develop, and sustain such outward forms of gracious and artistic endeavor as we feel will enhance the inner spiritual life of the church, and further that the name of this society shall be the Mayflower Guild.
That's pretty serious.
They talk about how one of them had the twins had twins, and they had the twins like out on the porch area, entryway, and they charged 10 cents to view the twins during this breakfast. And it was always fresh cinnamon rolls at the May breakfast.
Right. It was.
And if it wasn't, you got called out.
I have a friend that got called out because she thought she was doing everybody a favor and ordering a few small items from the bakery, and oh my goodness, she was a teacher, and so she couldn't participate, so she dropped off a big box of fresh bakery items, and they took the whole box and put it over here on the piano in this room, and no.
Oh dear.
And Cradle Roll was a group that met monthly for, I guess, a Bible study and a little snack and fellowship. And I don't remember, the Mayflower Guild women came to the Cradle Roll women, and they had kind of aged out of, or they were aging out of, the hardcore work in the kitchen and the May baskets and all the fundraising, and they wanted the younger generation at that time to step up and learn from them, and they weren't just going to abandon us, but they wanted us to learn from them how it was done, how it should be done, how it should look. And I just remember then we changed somewhere in that 1980s, we changed our name from Cradle Roll to Mayflower Women instead of Mayflower Guild.
Right.
And then that encompassed anybody of any age that, wanted to help continue this breakfast, which,
So what was egg coffee anyway?
well, egg coffee,
Because I never really did.
I've
I've never made it.
I have made egg coffee, and those big enameled white pots. I think there's one on the communion table right now. You boiled water, you make a slurry of your coffee grounds with an egg in it, and you make that
Like the whole egg?
the whole egg. Well, the whole egg. Some people even put in the shell. I don't put in the shell, but you could put in the whole egg or two, depending on how much you're making. But you have this big enamel kettle of water boiling, and you drop that slurry of coffee and egg in it, and you let it boil on the stove for, I think it's 7 minutes. I have it written down someplace. And at the end of 7 minutes, you take it off the stove, and you put a cup of cold water into it, and all of the coffee grounds sink to the bottom, and then you have clear coffee, because many times they used cups that were clear glass, and then coffee wasn't dark and black and brown, it was clear, you could see through it, and it would hold all day. It never tasted like, percolated coffee that was
Percolating.
over and over and over all day long. And that was the beauty of why people made egg coffee.
Oh.
We did things like we redecorated this room and the furnishings in it, helped with the carpeting on the Sunday school wing and the carpet in the sanctuary. And we never had pew cushions, so then we had pew cushions.
I remember when those came.
And then we had...
And that was all because of the Mayflower
women.
And the May
right.
breakfast.
And the May breakfast. And she remembered, I talked to her briefly, and she remembered that her mother would make elaborate May baskets. And she would take greeting card boxes that had clear plastic lids. And she would cover the bottom of the box in a pretty foil or a pretty paper. And then Gretchen would make fudge and cut it in individual little pieces and wrap each piece and put it in this box that had a clear lid so you could see what you were buying. Everything was clear, and then she'd wrap the box with a big bow, or she'd hand make an ornament for the top of the box.
The May baskets now, we basically just print on some pretty colored construction paper and cut them out. All kinds of different shapes and themes.
Animals and themes and
And
whatever.
we put a piece of candy on it, and we make. You said we made hundreds.
We got up to from hundreds. I would guess in the 90s we got up to making 1,000 May baskets. Which just boggles my mind to have 1,000 May baskets. That was one chairman's goal. We were going to have 1,000 May baskets. Breakfast starts at 7, so they would be lined up trying to get their May baskets.
That was my job. I would hand them a box and the price sheet. Everybody got a box full, and some of them were packed full of these.
Well, and a lot of
May
them
baskets.
sold for 10 cents, 35 cents,
Yep.
50 cents. I mean, it was the bigger ones that, the puppy dogs that maybe
Yeah.
went full of candy
For
and
50.
for 50 cents. It's a really nice community compliment because in attendance would be the banks and the offices that would, let their staff come for coffee break, and we would sell tickets in advance, I think, so that employers could send their staff or their workers to come over for coffee. But I think about, we had guests from churches all over town, and we were always so grateful that people took the time to come to it was kind of a rite of passage of spring. That I remember when we made aprons, so we would all look alike.
Yeah.
White aprons,
But
pinafore aprons.
Weren't those like supposed to be for like the Mayflower, the pilgrim gals?
Pilgrim-looking aprons.
Yeah.
They kind of
Yes.
probably resembled that. And we used them
Well,
at the...
didn't we used to wear hats too? The pilgrim? No, that was
Thanksgiving.
That was for Thanksgiving. Okay, good.
That was, yeah. No, not in my time. We didn't. Well, interestingly enough, I can't say anything. I've only lived in Iowa my life, but not all communities do May baskets, and I don't know why it became such a big deal in Spencer. But when my mom and dad moved to Spencer, in our previous community was Forest City, and we made May baskets, and we hung May baskets on neighborhood doors, and they always were like a candy bar or a cup of popcorn with candy in it, but you used a pipe cleaner,
Yep.
what we called pipe cleaners,
Yep.
colored pipe cleaners as a handle, and then hung them on the door and rang the doorbell and ran away.
Yep. Well, exactly.
And some communities don't even
And if you
celebrate May
you-
Day.
if you caught the person,
Oh, that's
You
right.
got to kiss
You
them.
got to kiss them. That was
was
part
kind
of
of
the
a-
story.
it was kind of a like a little spring
Yep.
love type thing. Total sense.
Mary Kay Zinn once told me, and she was the church secretary at the time when I joined the church, and she said, it doesn't make any difference if it's raining, snowing, or sunshining. They always have a good attendance.
Yeah.
It didn't make any difference. And we'd think, oh, if the weather is bad, nobody will come, but they would still line up and come and buy the baskets and enjoy the coffee and rolls. And she was right. It didn't make weather. And we've had congregational way to me was everybody is welcome. And I thought that was a really nice feeling, was that everybody was welcome. There was just a little bit more freedom. It wasn't a rigid ritual. I think that would be appealing to younger generations now. It was appealing to us in the 80s. One of our ministers one time said, just because the women of the church, for instance, have always done it this way, we're going to have to do it this way. That doesn't have to be. And that was, over, lasagna. We've always served lasagna, so we're going to serve spaghetti. Well, oh my gosh, the walls are not going to fall down.
Our reason for coming to this church was that David and we grew up different denominations. He was Baptist and I was Presbyterian. There was no Presbyterian church in town.
That's right.
And the Congregational Church used debts and debtors, so of course no. That's not it. But I grew up.
There were always times when we thought maybe, this is just too much and, maybe we should stop the May breakfast because it is a lot of work and it takes a lot of people. And as the generations moved on, more and more moms were back at work. And we had a lot of working, teaching, nursing moms that were that were working, and there was talk about dropping the May breakfast, and Lori Oders said, who did work also outside the home, she said, it'd be just like handing the Methodists $1,000. And I laughed and thought, okay.
That's exactly right.
We didn't drop it. And then there was a time when they would teach, because some of us in my generation
Didn't make rolls.
then they had some classes. Katie Howe, I remember, took the classes and learned to make rolls so she could make homemade rolls for the May breakfast. Muriel Schollerman taught. I don't know who else taught, but that was the biggest deal, was people aren't willing to do this because they don't know how.
Yeah.
So we were going to
You
learn.
should give a class.
Yeah.
Do you remember Mildred Muggy's orange rolls?
Yes.
That's in here.
I mean, they were gone.
And the banks and businesses all had contests to see who had the most employees attend the breakfast. Ozzie Cheney from Clay County Bank, Carl Tuttle from Farmers Bank, and Irvin DeVergston from the Women's Store were part of this heated contest.
Special. I'm not sure that everybody's church gets that much community support.
Yeah.
I think it's given me a sense of pride of belonging in that this is an organization that I felt very humbled to be a part of, but to make sure that that I did a good job, it made me feel like I had a purpose.
Well, I think it's what's been great. I've heard so many people after this pandemic that we've all lived through and are living through, that they are, when we did start singing again together, we had the cantata that we joined with another church for Christmas and for Easter, and so many people said it is so good to be back singing again. And I know I'm in another group outside of town, and the same thing was said there. We hadn't sung together for well over 2 years, and we used to sing a lot, and it was the same comments from those people, that the people in music are love it so, and it means a lot to them that when we did get back together, everyone had the same feeling, that it was so great to be together and sing, particularly sacred music, and
It, like you said, it's a family. We are so close knit. We help each other out when we have problems. It was fellowship.
Yeah.
It was a fellowship time, and
the 60s, one of our good friends was the leader of the group, and they purchased the first bells, handbells, and then later when and I was involved at this point, we bought another octave. So now we got 3.5 octaves, and they're really, really good bells. And
where are they from?
they're originally they're England, London,
Yes.
England. Yeah, from a company that actually built Big Ben And the Liberty Bell, most of us know the Liberty Bell, and so that they actually made those bells. They're at one time the oldest manufacturing company in Great Britain.
And the community of Spencer used to have, well, those of us in choir called the Battle of the Choirs. I think there was a more dignified term for it.
Choir Festival.
Oh, okay. Well, Battle of the Choirs. And I remember Kay was the director at the time, and each choir from the churches in the community would give up and give a song, and then we all sang Hallelujah Chorus, which was impressive at the end of the festival. And we were up there singing our song, and somehow we got a measure off. I don't know what it was. The whole choir was a measure off, and Sherry was able to pick up on it, and she caught up with us, and we were off just like we should have been. And made us sound good. So it kind of takes everybody to make things happen.
The first performance that I sang here in our Congregational Church was when the two churches merged for performance. Remember, it was with the radio. It was a World War II vintage performance, and the two choirs merged for that. We sang one Sunday at the Congregational Church and then at the Methodist Church.
It's just nobody ever knocks anybody down. You know, it's always positive.
We had just a congregational band that played one time at church, and we had parents, I found out, played trombone or trumpet.
Wasn't it called the Advent Band?
The Advent Band, that
it
is
was,
right.
yeah.
That is right. Yeah. So, yeah, we've had that. Who knows? It may come back.
Got to get out that clear.
But they do appreciate. It's just as important to appreciate music as it is to perform. So, I just hope that because I am getting older. And I've lost a few notes on the top and the bottom, so I just hope that I'll be able. I have a very good friend in the choir that's, 15 years older than I am, and he has a wonderful voice, and he loves to sing, and I hope that I'm around to sing when I'm his age, and because I do enjoy music, and it means a lot to me. Church is important to me, but music is a part of church for me. And so I hope that this will continue and we can still have our family of musicians.